Well, hello, everybody. Good afternoon. We have made it to the end of the first day of our amazing 5-day 6.5 Summit. Pat, what a day. Super excited to be here for the live Q&A. Can't believe all the sessions that we had and the fact that all of you, by the way, that we'll be introducing in just a moment, were able to stick with us all day in the middle of the summer and stay till the end and join us for this live Q&A. Super excited to have you here. Pat, this is going to be a good conversation.
No, it is. And, the speakers, the quality of the topics, and the strategic nature of the conversations, even though we were in, this cloud and infrastructure bucket was great. I watched all of them. I was tweeting away, and it was just great to see everybody here. So thank you all for coming to this live Q&A with no net. We are truly live here. So, and I think great place to start. We have Erin Chapple from Microsoft, Azure Core, Lisa Spelman from Intel. How are you? And Allison Dew, broadcasting from Australia. It is a morning there. How are you, Allison? How is everybody doing?
I'm good. I'm used to getting up at the crack of dawn a year into this, or before dawn.
Now, I'm just so blown away that you actually have connectivity because you're not in a big city, but it just really is incredible. So, hey, let's just jump right in. We got questions from Twitter, we got questions from reporters, and we have people putting questions into live and on YouTube chat. Let's start off on everybody's favorite hybrid architecture. It has seemingly been accepted as the now and the future for enterprise. Pretty much the entire industry agrees that the future is hybrid, but there's still a lot of debate as the distribution of the workloads, in the big cloud and the big data center, out on the edge, everywhere in between. How do you see this playing out? Just anyone who wants to jump in first.
So I'll start and say, first of all, boy, am I glad that debate seems like it's finally petering out. Let me just start with that. And if we've been in the industry a long time, as all of us have, you've seen these almost kind of religious war debates, which from the inside seem sort of silly. I mean, just, the debate about is the PC dead and you're selling billions of PCs, and, you're thinking, well, no, it's not dead, it's just evolving. And the reason I think that one is a relevant example as we think about the cloud environment is because you sort of see the same phenomenon, which is there's this talk track where people are searching for this one answer or the holy grail or the black and white of it's hybrid cloud or it's on-prem or it's all in the cloud. And the truth is, yes, all of the above. And so the much more difficult and yet practical answer is all companies need to figure out what the right infrastructure is for them. If you think about the explosion of data at the edge and the complexity around data management and the need for privacy, data controls, regulation, security, and the list goes on and on, there are some instances where it's going to be right for a company to have their data at the edge or on-prem, and there are some instances where it's going to be right for them to want the flexibility of the cloud. And there is no single answer, which is not as good for Twitter because you can't collapse that down into this little soundbite, but I think it's the truth.
Yeah, so Microsoft and Intel, you operate on both ends of the spectrum, and I like to use the analogy where we are right now. By the way, Allison, absolutely, thank goodness we're actually here, because 5 years ago we were actually debating whether the hybrid cloud was the right thing to do. But the way that I see it is we have cloud native companies coming in from one angle, trying to build out hybrid and on-prem. And then we have what I would call the classic on-prem companies building it from the other side to enable cloud and then as a service type of capabilities like we have with Apex. So, Erin, what do you think about this? What do you make of the hybrid cloud?
Well, I have to say, as someone who started running the Windows Server business and now is running the Azure Core business, I couldn't believe more in hybrid, right? And just seeing it reflect, right, what customers are looking to do. And I think you need to step back and take a look at why are organizations choosing hybrid? Because that's the key reason that's going to drive the workload distribution, right? And so we see hybrid being front and center for regulatory or data sovereignty requirements, right? That are going to drive the need to have data local. And that's going to then, to Allison's point, going to drive the applications that are consuming the data at the edge, right? You have scenarios where you have latency and connectivity that are super interesting, right? Where think about a manufacturing line and I want to be able to use ML in order to spot defects, et cetera. I want to do that at the edge. I don't want to round trip that data, right? All the way up to the cloud and back. Or, I might just have legacy applications that are going to be on premises, are going to stay on premises because they're about to retire, right? And so, you really need to think about the range of patterns and workloads because that's what's driving the business, driving the business decision, the digital transformation that's happening. And so I think it's really important for us to think about the ability to write once and run anywhere, right? And how do we enable that, right? Well, from a Microsoft point of view, we're really using the K8's platform to deliver that promise, right? Because it provides consistency with that cloud native container application and the portability and the scale and failover capabilities. And so by combining that Kubernetes or K8's based platform with Arc-enabled services, you now can provide this consistency, not only for the developer who wants to write once and run anywhere, but then the operations side of the house, because I think a lot of the things that become challenging in this space are the government and management and security, right? And so it's about how do you enable, right, that application to be written in a way that is to consume, right? Whether or not you're in the banking industry and you want that local data sovereignty, whether or not you're in the healthcare, right, and you have different regulatory requirements, all of these things feed into that app pattern, and it is that's driving the choice from a customer standpoint.
I think that was well said by both of my co-panelists. And I don't want to repeat, I only want to add on the way that we think about it in terms of product development at Intel is cloud is an architecture, not a location. And so our customers are going to make a lot of choices about what they do and where they do that, but it needs to be cloud enabled truly throughout the entirety of the data lifecycle. So at the point of content collection and creation, so thinking the edge, you actually still want a cloud architecture there. And if you look at the work we've done in the network space over the past several years, it has been to push cloud style of architecture, with our network partners into those workloads. And then of course, obviously at the core data center. So if you start with that mindset from your application space, from your security space, from all your different total cost of ownership challenges you face, you'll probably come up with the best right answer for your industry and your business that might take advantage of a variety of different cloud options that are out there.
Yeah, it provides a lot of perspective. At random, by the way, just a great panel. My eyes are like going between the three of you across my screen, and I got my camera like up above. And all I'm thinking to myself is, which one of you guys could develop that camera that sits slightly behind the monitor and follows my eyes? So I quit looking away all the time. Sorry, I just figured between the three, maybe we could put the brain trust together, and then the camera can kind of follow me. All right. I want to pivot here to multi-cloud, I'm going to, Erin, I'm going to start with you, and it's because I attended Build a couple of weeks back, and I listened to Satya, and what I noticed was probably the first time I'm starting to hear the cloud CEOs outspokenly talking about multi-cloud. They're actually acknowledging, hey, not all the workloads are going to land here. And I've heard it now from a few of the big public cloud players. And of course, we're hearing from all the, on-prem and infrastructure in the private cloud data center companies talking about workloads landing. So with all that in mind, there seems to still be a little bit of a split debate here. Some seem to think that it's going to be one public cloud, one, it's going to be prem. Others are thinking, I'm hearing 3-4 different clouds might end up serving purposes to meet all the different needs. What are you guys saying? What's shifting the narrative, Erin? Why all of a sudden are we hearing all the companies kind of come out and saying, hey, multi-cloud is going to happen and we're going to make it, and in fact, we're going to make it achievable. We're going to help.
Well, yeah, I almost think that the multi-cloud conversation right now is where the hybrid conversation was, 3-5 years ago, right? And it's just this natural evolution as people think about embracing the technology in the cloud. But, multi-cloud is increasingly top of mind for the customers that we talk to. And some customers have found themselves in a multi-cloud state through organic adoption, right? Or through, they have different departments that chose different cloud providers for whatever the best of breed solution was for what they needed to do, through acquisitions, right? Or another way in which we see that coming into organizations. Others are making a strategy decision, or that there's a regulatory reason, right? Why they have to choose multiple cloud vendors. Or maybe it's core to their business. Think about an ISV who may want to build their solution on both Azure and AWS and GCP in order to support the customer requirements, because they have customers who are consuming all three of those clouds. And so, whatever is the case, we want customers to be able to take advantage of existing skills and investments to support those common multi-use cloud cases. And I'm going to go back again to Azure Arc, right? In terms of, creating this central control plane that gives customers the ability to govern their applications, to write their applications, run them across multiple clouds and build them in that portable way, so that they could run across the clouds. But you also have that core operations management and the security piece of thing that ties it all together. So definitely, this is something that we see organizations moving towards. And as you said, we want to provide the customers with the flexibility and the choice to be able to adopt the technology in the way that works for them, but then to be able to add value and provide that simplicity when it comes to the overall operations and development.
Just to chime in on top of Erin. So before I was in this role, leading the Xeon team at Intel, I was actually in IT infrastructure for Intel. And this is, several years ago, and we talk about multi-cloud now. We found we had a multi-cloud environment before we'd even built our first cloud by actually pulling our business unit companies' purchasing credit cards and finding how many cloud instances they were already out buying. So it's like anyone and any company of any size that thinks they're not going to live in a multi-cloud environment, I think is just wishful thinking. I have my own experience from sitting inside a traditional enterprise IT and literally being part of leading through that evolution of building a satisfactory on-prem cloud that could service our business units, as well as recognizing how we needed to use the public cloud offerings in order to complement and supplement that. But that happened years ago, just with purchasing credit cards as the very start.
Yeah, it's the shadow IT. Allison, I want to tee you up here because you guys had a pretty important launch too, and you're kind of taking a whole new look at this exact situation as well. What are you guys seeing through the lens of Dell Tech and Apex?
So I was going exactly where Lisa went, which is this idea that if you think it's not already happening in your environment, you don't really know what's actually happening in your environment. And then there's a piece that Erin said as well, which is the need for existing skills and to build on skills. And so if you think about the pragmatic reality of what's actually happening in environments and what we have announced with Apex last month at Dell Technologies World is this understanding of the fact that companies need the ease and simplicity of a cloud operating model with the benefits of on-prem as well. And being really pragmatic about those combined needs and focusing on enabling our customers to have that experience to truly deliver simplicity. Everybody says they're simple, but the reality is when you actually look at what's happening in our customers' environments, the vast majority of those environments don't actually live up to that promise. So how do we keep pushing ourselves to really help our customers realize that promise of simplicity, all with the security needs that we know are incredibly important for our data? You only have to read the newspaper to figure out how important that is and how increasingly important that becomes every single day. So if you think about a really pragmatic approach to that tremendous opportunity, that's what we're really focused on now.
Yeah, it's funny. I love the notion of debating multi-cloud because 5 years ago, people were saying hybrid cloud. And what I love about this year is you had people who are denying that multi-cloud exists actually launch multi-cloud tools. So don't tell anybody, but it actually happened. And I put a few snarky tweets out there, as you might expect from me. By the way, I apologize for anybody who has to follow me on Twitter. But yeah, let's move a little bit from abstract to kind of some definitive questions here. One of the things I love about attending all of these cloud and infrastructure announcements is you get said bank we'll keep the name anonymous, that says, "Oh my gosh, we are all in on the cloud," and then it's like, "Hey, what percent of your applications are cloud?" Like about 5%, and I'm wondering, for those with a ton of legacy apps out there, is their only answer lift and shift? Where do they go from there? And Lisa, haven't given you the first chance yet, so if you could hit this one, that'd be great.
Yeah, there's an element of lift and shift, and there's reasons why you might choose to do that. And maybe it just provides you the right opportunity at the right time, or it hits a total cost of ownership model, or whatever it does. But it's not changing the way you deliver your services to your customers. And so where you see customers getting a lot of value from their cloud architecture, and again, I do mean that not only as the location, but really truly investing in their cloud, is when they are thinking of it from the whole stack into much more of a cloud native delivery style. So at the OS level, at the orchestration level, all the way through to the application level. And that's where you actually make that shift in a digital transformation of your service delivery. And you can see there are enterprises around the globe that are driving this and accelerating it for themselves. There's others that are resisting with every last bone in their corporate DNA. And then there's others that waited a while and are being drugged forward by their customer base because actually a digital native hasn't come up to replace that service, so they need it. But I think it is really hard to think of transitioning your service model and your service delivery, whatever industry that is, into a truly digital style without going through the re-architecting and the kind of start from scratch cloud native. It's an opinion, but I think it's hard.
The thing that I would add there, and you talk about what's happened in the industry over the last 20 months, is for many years we had been tracking something, the Digital Transformation Index, and it was just a very simple way for us to understand where customers were in their digital transformation journey. And what you saw was years of, I really think this is important. I think this is really a big priority. And then you'd come back the next year and it'd be like, I really think this is important, but I haven't done anything about it. And so you had, I can't remember what we called them, but you had kind of the early adopters, and they were staying set as a certain percentage of the population. And then suddenly in the last year and a bit, there has been this incredible push to, wow, not only is this really important, but I have to do something about it. And why is that happening? The reason it's happening is because the thought process around picking the technology is actually comparatively easy. I don't think it's easy, but I think it's comparatively easy. The bit that's actually so hard is if you are a large existing company having the courage, backbone, operational excellence to really say, no, we're going to think about this differently. That's on one end of the spectrum. Or if you're an up and coming medium business, to make long-term decisions and not just kind of be swiping your credit card. So you've got these where you ultimately add all of this complexity. In 10 years, you look around and you think, wow, I thought that I was cloud native and I thought that I was really emerging, but the truth of the matter is now I have a different kind of complexity. So it's not the same kind of complexity that companies that were born 30 years ago experience, but it's a whole different kind of complexity where companies don't necessarily understand their costs or what's really happening in their environments. So I think there's this phenomenon, which is, it's so easy for us to say, sitting on this panel, really hard to do. It's not as much just about picking the technology. It's about the hard, heavy lift of business process and cultural change. And how do you become a data first company? That's why we were all stuck prior to COVID, because that's actually even harder.
Yeah, and technical skill set. I mean, there's no company trying to make the transformation that says they have enough of the right development capacity, enough of the right AI technical knowledge, enough data scientists, et cetera. So.
Yeah, and it is incredible that we're 10 years into the public cloud, and literally, and whether you want to say 20% of the data and 20% of the applications are in the public cloud, that just means 80% is still on-prem or on the edge, and I find that fascinating. So, Erin, Microsoft is obviously plays, Windows Server, Azure Stack, and also Azure. The big cloud here. How do you see this?
But I think you have to think about it from the business point of view. And I agree with both Lisa and Allison in the sense that, the end state in some sense is I want to be investing my resources in a place that's going to help with the digital transformation of my business, right? It's going to help me move the business forward. And so in that, I think you need to look at the portfolio of the applications that you have and realize, there's a set of applications that are maybe in the end of their lifespan. And like, it's really not going to provide me any value in order to go through, or the risk, right, associated with actually disrupting that. I'm not going to want to move that. And so that's probably a great class of applications to leave where they are, right, and continue to maintain them and let them sort of run out their value in the organization. But there's also probably another set of applications that are complicated to move, but they actually are a bridge in some sense between what the business is doing today and then what the business needs to do tomorrow. And so there you start to think about the modernization that you're going to do around that application, right? How can I think about leaving the application where it is, but building out through the use of PaaS services, things like API management or logic apps or whatnot, gaining access to the data that's in that in order to help with that transformation, right? And as both Lisa and Allison said, it's not just the tech, it's also just the whole culture and DevOps and way in which you're doing service delivery that goes around that. And then there's going to be a set of things that you're going to need to re-architect because they're core, right, to your future. And that's the place where you're going to want to double down and think about what we're doing from a cloud native standpoint, right? And then of course, right, you want this infrastructure and consistency and write once, run anywhere approach to be able to then, provide flexibility for where you want to actually deploy those. But I don't think it's one size fits all. And I don't think that it's all moved to the cloud. And I don't think it's all on-prem, right? You've got to be smart and really be doing these things because they're providing value to you at the end of the day, which is about modernizing those critical business processes and those critical pieces that are going to help transform in response to what you're seeing in the market and the industry around you.
It's interesting what COVID has accelerated on that as well. If you think of industries like healthcare has so much opportunity to continue to digitize and benefit better patient outcomes around the world. And just COVID alone in that small way of making a digital appointment acceptable. So all of a sudden we went from that was never going to be like possible or commonplace to figuring out digital check-in, digital billing, digital, meeting, all of it done. And so that innovation sometimes is forced by the environment more so than any corporate strategy or IT strategy that might be written down.
Yeah, we'd be pretty remiss to not point out how much COVID actually accelerated a lot of adoption. I mean, you pointed out something like telemedicine, Lisa. I laugh because I say even just using video on a video conference. Like, do you remember people used to just not turn on their video? Even if it worked with video, it just was like, we see enough of each other. I'm just going to use the audio. And now we actually really do inherently use the video in our meetings, and the adoption and the pace of adoption and, the everyday utilization and just how it's become ubiquitous with meetings was a great example. And, you go deeper and there were so many of those trends. So I want to take this to, I'm not going to call it a lightning round because you're not in a rush yet, but you guys have done a great job answering these questions. And, we had some questions that have come in for each of you. So we're going to at least make sure you each get to answer one. I'm going to start with you, Allison. You kicked off today's, the day one as the keynote. Did a great job. Really appreciated that. And this kind of actually talks to the index you mentioned just now. You focused on trends and what organizations need to be considering when implementing a digital transformation strategy. Now, that can be a little ephemeral. And by the way, we do that study every year too. And so we love it from a broad cultural standpoint. But a lot of our audience was hitting us up like, okay, very good stuff, Allison. Where do we start though? Which one of these big trends? Because I think you guys just all kind of said it, like, how do we prioritize? How do we actually get this stuff done? Because they hear it, they like it, and then a year passes and nothing's happened. So tell us, Allison, where do we start?
So I think Erin actually, in a way, already answered this question because she talks about being really thoughtful about which processes have to be done where and how. And this idea of you look at the explosion of data at the edge and sort of instead of getting caught up in the hype of it's all this or it's all that, what I would say is for your industry, what are the processes that you should digitize first? And I'll use a very quick example from my own organization. I also run marketing. And as we looked at over many years how we do the digitization of our customer data because of privacy issues, because of so many other reasons, speed, efficiency, the fact that the organization had been working on that process for so many years, because it was the most important thing to us as a big direct company with a direct business, enabled us to then get better at our other marketing technology initiatives. So what I would say is look at all of the trends, but then pick the processes that are most important to your business and learn and get better. And that, again, really easy for me to say, really hard from a cultural perspective. And you have to have the leadership culture that enables that.
That's good. So let me get to the next question. I'm going to put Erin on the hot spot here. So Erin, first of all, I appreciated you talking more about the industry view as opposed to marketing Azure, which, by the way, but you did bring up some pretty salient points. And some question that I got was, you talked about Azure and Microsoft having in totality. I mean, you have Office 365, you've got Dynamics 365 and that data. You have data that's on-prem under management under Windows. You have Azure Stack. You have the big cloud with Azure. You have multi-cloud with Arc. And then you have all these developer tools, no code, low code, and a whole lot of code with GitHub and Visual Studio. What is the advantage to having everything in one place? Is that a risk for a customer to have that? How does it all in balance work out for customers?
Well, I think it's, an organization isn't just looking at a cloud provider in some sense to provide the infrastructure pieces, right? It goes back to the conversation we've all been having around that it's about the digital transformation of business processes. And so that is going to involve, right, a set of end user and knowledge worker information. That's going to involve a set of business applications and processes. It's going to involve the developer in some sense being able to, take their idea and really, how do we get idea to code and code to cloud and that whole chain, right? To be working and meeting. And at the end of the day, it's around productivity. And so by having all of these pieces together, right, that really is the power of the Microsoft Cloud, right? That you have an organization that understands, and that ourselves, that we have been through this digital transformation in terms of the way in which that we're building those solutions, and we really see, that as being the platform, right, for the creators that exist out there, the platform for organizations to be able to build their applications and deliver and focus on their business, right? And so I think at the end of the day, this is all about, how do you let organizations spend the most of their time on the things that are most critical and important and that they know the most? And how do we provide that platform in an integrated way that really helps that whole tool chain and application as well as operations through the life cycle?
Yeah, one thing that I appreciated, and we had talked about this in the green room before you and I chatted, was you've given away by Microsoft using a lot of open source, which, my gosh, 10 years ago would be like, that's not going to happen. I mean, you even have Linux distributions at the edge, and running a ton of Linux inside of Azure. I think that is. The escape valve if somebody doesn't want to give everything to every one vendor, knowing that hey, okay, this is based on industry standard tools. I don't mean to answer the question, but this is what we talked about in our green room interview.
And it also goes back there, right? It's not only the openness in some sense and the focus on being a platform and having choice, right, in terms of the tooling and the technology that you want to use, but it also goes back to the conversation around multi-cloud, right? And how do you bring back in the fact that multi-cloud, is the reality that our customers are experiencing? And so how can you, use the value of, something like a developer, to service tool chain with something like Azure Arc that enables you to extend that, right, on premises into multi-cloud in order to take, for us to be able to do the management and operations and security of that so that you can focus as an organization on what's most critical to you, right? And so again, it's we're the platform, and in some sense, we're not successful unless customers are successful in building their applications and services. And so it's about flexibility and choice and whatever that mechanism, and how do we bring it together in a way that's going to accelerate that digital transformation and the cultural transformation that we've talked about today.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot there to unpack, but they're really good insights. Lisa, you've been waiting patiently and appreciate it very much. You know, I think back the last time we did an event together, not at the same event, but did it together. We were in New York and we were on a stage and you were asking me questions. So this is my chance to get you back. But in all serious, you know, we had a lot of presence today. You saw Pat and I sitting in the studios in Santa Clara, kicking off with Pat today. That was fun. We actually got to go in the same room. We were not sitting anywhere near each other, but we filmed in the same room. That was kind of cool. And then Naveen, you know, he didn't even want Pat or I services. He's like, nope, I got this. I'm going to do this on my own. And that was cool. But it was a first for us. And, you know, I just want to take a moment. 6.5 Summit's always been about big ideas, breaking through kind of the noise and not just being another event. But you know, Pat and I always said, wouldn't it be cool if some companies started to break news and started sharing some announcements? And today, that's what happened. Naveen included some news and announcements in his IPU strategy keynote. And we just had a number of questions, frankly, from press and folks that did not know it was going to be news. So they didn't show up and haven't had a chance yet. And they're like, we want to know about the news. Tell us what happened. What did we miss? Because we've got articles to write.
Yeah, so, Daniel, yeah, I had emails from press that are like, how do I get into the 6.5 Summit? For breaking news. But anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No, it's great. So I'm teeing you up a little bit, but it was because we really did get a bunch of people, like I said, because everyone, you know, we always stage this. On demand is great. We love on demand. I think everyone on this panel probably enjoys doing this live, but realizes a lot of stuff is easier on demand. So we just had a lot of people come out and we're like, all right, we missed an announcement. Let's use this as an opportunity to hear what just happened.
No, absolutely. So, you know, Allison and Erin are talking about they're providing the platform to the customers, and we're the platform under the platform, if you will. So we're always seeking to continue to innovate and add new capabilities and address those customer challenges. And so what you heard from Naveen today was talking about our view of the data center's evolution. And really, it's how are we going to help address these customer challenges around underutilized resources, total cost of ownership, security challenges that are being faced just ubiquitously and all types of markets. And what we announced was our infrastructure processing unit, or IPU, which is essentially a networking device that connects to a CPU or an XPU. So whether that's your, GPU or your AI accelerator, and it helps connect it to the network and accelerate those host infrastructure functions, which fundamentally allows you to free up more of the capability that your CPU or your XPU has to solve your business challenge. So these can be used in existing and emerging infrastructure use cases, security, virtualization, storage, load balancing, all sorts of, foundational capabilities. We'll use them for our customers for virtual network functions, and definitely use our IPUs as the foundation for our microservices service delivery platform. So we're really excited about this capability, and the exciting part is we've been developing them in partnership with some of our biggest customers, like, say Microsoft here, and you may have heard of them. And we view this as an evolution from our industry-leading Ethernet, our SmartNICs, our FPGA capabilities, and then graduating into this richer set of capabilities. Hence the new naming of the IPU.
Yeah, and it's not every day you can kick off an announcement and be number one market share. I thought that was very smooth.
Yeah.
I did get the chance to talk with Naveen and publish an article at Embargo Time up on Forbes.com. Let me get it'll be in the show notes if you'd like to read it. Wow. We are coming to an end here, and I just want to thank all of you for making day one, a great day, ending day. This is our first time we did a live, right? There's live and then there's live, and we're live. No nets out there. Thank you for asking some challenging questions, some relatively easy ones, but also the ability to talk about the areas that you're in and what all of your companies are great at. So much appreciated, Erin, Lisa, and Allison. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
See you soon.
So this is Pat Moorhead and Daniel Newman closing out day one of the 6.5 Summit. We have 4 more days to go, and they will be as awesome as this day one. Have a great evening, morning, if you're in Australia, evening, wherever you are. Just have a great day. Take care.